Welcome everyone to our demo roundups. We'll be talking today about the state of AI and incident management. Let me just introduce myself. My name is Afonso. I'm a senior developer advocate here at PagerDuty, part of the developer relations team, and I'll be your host for this session. Let's start this panel with having our speakers introduce themselves. Carly, do you want to do the honors of introducing yourself first?
Of course, and thanks for having me, Daniel. So, hi everybody. My name is Carly Richmond. I lead the developer advocacy team within DevRel at Elastic. And before I've been at Elastic for 3 years, and before that, I used to work at Morgan Stanley as a software engineer. So I was more the person that was getting pulled onto incident calls to try and resolve issues. But that informs a lot of my thoughts about how we should be using AI and other things. So I'm excited to get into it.
So I'm Pedro, I'm based in Lisbon. I've been at PagerDuty for about 3 years. I'm a senior engineering manager and I lead a couple of teams on the AI First group. So we develop products for Gen AI for PagerDuty.
Hey everyone, I'm Jason Yee. I'm a staff technical advocate at Datadog. Been at Datadog twice, actually. This is my second term. In between, I led developer relations at a company called Gremlin, which builds a chaos engineering platform. So I taught a lot of people about how to do chaos engineering. And before I started my DevRel journey, I was actually a software engineer at MongoDB.
My name's Shawn, doing wonderful things in generative AI. Would love to talk more about incident management. I have a long history in developer relations, as well as some machine learning experience. So would love to talk about some of the things we're doing in the state of AI today.
It's about time we start with our first question. So the first question that we have here is and we'll go over each one of you. And just a reminder, if you're watching, feel free to drop a question on either on the Q&A or on the chat if you would like to ask something as well. So the first question that I would like to ask you is, how is AI changing your incident management practices and workflows? So with this, do you have any examples that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think the world is changing very fastly, specifically on when we talk about incident management and AI. I think the ability to look for data is becoming incredibly easier. We see responders having the need to look for more data in more systems to understand what's the cause of an incident and understand the impact. So some tools such as MCP and the ability to drive most of this data collection on your IDE, which is like the main tool that developers have. I think it's becoming more easy and faster for responders to get the hold to the data and then like have a faster response time to incidents and better correlate data that they have at their disposal.
Yeah, I guess I'll dovetail off of that. I think the faster time to actually triage, because you have the data and it can be correlated, is definitely something we've seen. The other thing that we've seen at Datadog, when we first started using AI for incidents, AI was still relatively immature, and I think the best thing that it was useful for was summaries. And so that's where we initially saw most of our benefits was, when an incident gets on, you've got like everybody's responding, you get an incident commander, and you're trying to get things set up. But as you're pulling in other teams, like the largest thing that was slowing down our teams was like, new team comes on and somebody has to get them up to speed and be like, by the way, you're getting pulled in because we saw that your service is a dependency on this thing that we're having a problem with. And so now we're taking all this time to get you up to speed. And so the benefit we saw was like, AI is awful at generating a bunch of stuff, but it's really, really good at summarizing stuff. So if we can have it automatically summarize the discussion from Slack or whatever, and then just present that whenever somebody joins that incident channel, they get a summary and they can just read that without like bothering someone. It means that other person can go and like still focus on fixing things or investigating while that other person comes up to speed. So that's where we found the first big benefits.
Yeah, I think Jason's right about this notion of summarization of particular incidents. I think that's something I'm seeing SRE teams doing. In fact, I think we've got some stuff internally as well. In terms of raising incidents in the first place, I think it would be naive not to mention things like, agents that might do workflows to triage particular incidents. I think when you look at junior engineers looking to see, actually, should I be jumping on this thing straight away? That can be a difficult problem that you learn with experience. So using models to try and triage is something that is definitely coming through, along with quintessential chatbots. Interestingly enough, I'm also hearing people saying more about more traditional things that have been around for a while, that now that we're starting to understand more about AI under the hood and how it works, that they're saying, oh, there's these existing techniques I didn't even think about using before. So anomaly detection and machine learning models from looking at patterns in data and outage scenarios is certainly something that I'm also seeing people more, I guess, comfortable using, because they're now more confident in the vernacular and it doesn't necessarily seem as scary in some regards.
On top of all of that, there in the beginning, yes, summaries. In the beginning, yes, oh, at least more closer this year, agents were getting closer to things actually happening, besides it just telling me. More alarm bells are going off. I already knew. I saw the red red alert. So thank you for the summary. It also helps. And I know we'll get more into that, but I'm more into sometimes the thing that's going wrong. We didn't create alarm bells for it. So there's no red thing, there's no notification. So how could we make an incident management system that alerts for things we didn't put an alert on? That is one of the things that I have seen people going in the incident management system, where it can see what's wrong and generate those types of alerts in a kind of system that I wouldn't just basically pattern out. I'm used to seeing that red button, that specific red button go off. So I now, tune it out. But with some generative systems, it can in fact give me a different red button that I wouldn't tune out because this is a different incident. So immediately in my humans system, I immediately say, oh, something new is wrong. What is this red button? So literally having different UI to be able to figure out, okay, something's different is wrong today, rather than the same alert that I get every single day, except for I didn't read the words, so I didn't notice the big red prod is down, or whatever we're supposed to be doing. So that's the biggest thing I've seen, in which being able to get through the noise of all of the alerts in incident management, how can we figure out what do I really need to prioritize today in the wonderful noise that is keeping prod up.
That's great, and we just had our first question while you were all talking about that part. So someone asked, how are you mitigating hallucinations in the use cases that you mentioned? Because that's something that, well, we tend to see happen often. So did anyone have any experiences at use cases where the stuff you mentioned and the AI start to hallucinate?
Yeah. Maybe not necessarily specific to instant management, but I have seen hallucinations, and I'm actually quite surprised sometimes at how even engineers sometimes haven't quite twigged that AI is not infallible, and it can, I mean, it's basically generating text based on probabilities. That's how it's working under the covers. And I have had to have interesting conversations with people before where they think, even though they've used like techniques such as RAG, so for those who don't know, that's retrieval augmented generation, where you're passing in context via documents from, probably if we relate to incident management, a knowledge base of things that we would use to fix a problem, or other sources of information like common errors and fixes and causes and stuff, that still therefore means that it's not going to be generating something that's wrong. I think there is an element still of training people in those situations that, yes, it's generated something that we can use, but we still need to, you know, still be able to validate that it's correct, which in an outage situation is quite difficult because time is critical at that point. So I get that it's a problem. But I think that, along with things like testing out the solution in times of calm and not panic, passing in relevant context and engaging in other notions of context engineering. So not just the data, but looking at the prompts and the other things is probably something else that you need to do when the world is not on fire and you need to fix something so that you've got a bit more confidence in it. And then also using techniques such as human in the loop to actually validate those things in the first place. But I'm sure maybe some of the guys have got something to add too.
Yeah, I guess I would just add in there, like, any company like PagerDuty with your AI tools, Datadog with our AI tools, it's not just passing things blindly to AI. Like, there are a ton of parameters that you can customize. And so, as engineers are working on these, they are tuning that. So you can actually tune all of the AI services out there and basically tell them either to be more creative or more strictly true to the data that's passed. On the strictest settings, basically all it's going to do is like quote you stuff back, which sometimes isn't useful, but it's all tuned. So I would say like hallucinations is definitely something, as all of the engineers that are building these systems are working on, they are playing with those and adjusting them and constantly testing.
Boom. And the only thing I will add is it's probabilistic. And as Jason said, we are tuning for those things. So it does hallucinate, but it's like a probability. So like if it's a 10%, we trained it down so that it doesn't do the 10%. And hear me out, we could just generate 10 of them and then pick one of the 9 that is correct after we tuned it down to know that at least most of them are going to be correct. So even in the hallucinations, we measure the rate of those and literally can train for the accuracy. But still a problem. I try not to tell you anybody has solved it. It's still an accuracy thing. But when it's really low cost to actually verify, do a validation, then you can do as many as you want. Do 5 more, generate another incident management report, see if that one's correct. When it becomes low compute, it becomes a lot less. I'd really care less about, 1 in 10 is going to hallucinate. I just generate 100, and only a couple of those will be wrong, and then you listen to the other 99. But until we get there where it's actually cheap, where I could generate 100 of my incident management reports that are super long, I'm hoping you have at least 90 plus accuracy, so that at least your engineers feel like when they generate 1 or 2 or 3, they can at least believe it rather than assuming, is this a hallucination? I hope y'all have some validation techniques. We've been testing things forever in engineering. So hopefully you have some tests up.
We spend a lot of time, fine-tuning the prompts, fine-tuning our systems to be the most accurate that they can. But, at the end of the day, it's probably probabilistic and non-deterministic. But I would say that, most of the hallucinations that, people might be aware are because they're using, LLMs on an ad hoc way, probably not using the best model to do that job. And we spend a lot of time to find the right model for the specific task. We use a lot of models, and we know that the LLMs are getting more powerful, more fast and cheaper at the same time. So things will continue to improve. But what we are doing is to be very, very focused on regression testing, on having like a test suite that allows us to test multiple cases and to find the best model and the best prompt engineering possible for each specific use case.
Okay, thanks, Pedro. And we hope we answered the hallucinations question. This can get a spicy hot takes from some people out here. So I would like to ask, in your opinion, where should AI not touch your incident management process? For instances, one example that I've given to people, I don't see AI becoming an incident commander anytime soon, because that's the person that we need taking charge, being more analytic, and we don't want to risk any wrong decisions. So from your perspective, what are things that you feel like, okay, AI is not touching this thing anywhere soon for me in my incident management process?
For me, there are very few things that should be off limits in terms of systems, but But to our points earlier, like you always want a human in there validating things. The areas where I think things get really dangerous are around data, both from a like potentially you're storing things that are privacy, PII, other things like that from your customers. But I think to a worst case, right? Like I think it came out yesterday or the day before, someone had basically injected a malicious bit of code into AWS's AI systems. And if you read the prompt, it's basically telling the system like, you need to clean everything up. So go delete everything from the user's computer. Now, the question is whether that would actually run. But data is that, like data is the lifeblood of every company. It's not the systems that run as much as we think it is. It's all the data that's passing through those. And so to me, it's less about exposing PII, which is a hugely critical, very expensive problem. It's the like, what if it makes a mistake and there's no human in the loop and it deletes things? And like, that to me is the worst nightmare.
Picking up, I agree. Like sensitive PII data has always been an issue with AI or without AI, right? We need to follow norms. There's norms in terms of exchanging data between APIs, about storing things, logging stuff. That's already a concern. So obviously, that data, if we are not storing it like in open way, it also should not be sent through LLMs. Should be anonymized, and so those type of things. So I think most of concerns that are placed nowadays are already applied in some norms in terms of security or data protection kind of thing. And I agree with Jason on the like, what's the barriers that we want to place on AI? What's the exposure that each system or each company has in terms of that? Eventually reading data could also be an issue, but updating data could be even more dangerous.
Okay, so one of the roles that we have been seeing getting agentified or becoming part of this AI flow in the incident command system we've seen often is the scribe, and this has been mentioned here already throughout this discussion. So, and I want to allude on this because I think it was Shawn that mentioned this earlier, like at the post-incident review part. How do we keep the human factor in the world where we have these AI-generated situations like scribe generating the stuff that's happening, post-incident reviews being generated? Because, well, to be honest, one of the goals of having postmortems is for us to learn and while writing them as well. So, and now we have AI generating this for us. So, where are the places where you see that, okay, we need to figure out how we keep the human factor in this land of everything that's being AI generated for us?
I think there's two key ceremonies that I think of when it comes to the human factor within incident management. So the first one would be postmortems and specifically blameless ones. That was certainly something that I was really happy to see change through my time when I started, this notion of, not attributing blame and just looking at it purely from a learning and improvement perspective. Because even thinking about AI and the generation stuff that we've all been talking about, it might be able to generate some things, but some of the wacky ideas of how to actually not just generate things like updating knowledge bases and stuff, but also validating those things with human in the loop, like we've also been talking about, is important. So we need to make sure that that's still protected in there so we can learn and improve. The other thing is notions of like wargaming scenarios and other mechanisms to try and evaluate the potential ways a system can go wrong. I mean, obviously, Jason talked about aspects of gremlin and chaos engineering, and there's tools to help you with that. But certainly from the wargaming scenarios that I've seen and been a part of, sometimes people come up with really random, wacky ideas as to how something might end up coming down. And sometimes that creativity can be something that AI is not quite there in terms of replicating. So for me, those two types of kind of, I don't want to say ceremonies, but those two types of kind of engagements seem to be the things that I don't think AI is going to replace at the moment.
Yeah, when it comes to the postmortems, one thing that we do at Datadog is every Monday we have a postmortem reading group. And so basically it's anybody that had any sort of incident, whether that started with an AI generated thing, or maybe maybe they got lazy and didn't even touch it. Haven't actually seen that, but if that were to happen, it still gets raised in our reading group, and you've got a bunch of SREs, including like very high level, senior staff level, and they all read through it. And it initially started just to ensure that, with, as Carly mentioned, like blameless and things like that, that people were writing these in a way that they were actually learning, right? And that they weren't just like saying, oh, it was Joe's fault. Like that's what we learned. It's like, no, like let's understand the system. And so as we've started incorporating more AI, that ceremony, if you will, because I love that word that you use, Carly, that ceremony is basically still in place. And so it can catch those things, right? It's very obvious when you're reading through and you're like, that's not exactly what happened, or that's maybe a hallucination. We can still catch that and then point people back to it, and they're still learning.
Boom. And jumping on that, the learning aspect, too many people are just gonna grab the TLDR summary. Lots of people in incident reports sometimes don't read the report, ask their friend what the report said, what was the deal. And being able to actually parse through that with your own questions instead of me asking my colleague that question. In theory, I could have asked the report, and it could have told me actual sources of what, instead of me asking my colleague and they say, trust me, bro, this is what happened. We would love some more sources so that we could be more informed, rather than seeing more text, more reports, more things that unfortunately some of our colleagues will ignore, and will just listen to what the person who generated the report said. So really having that engagement with your colleagues, where it's not just the report, this is the same data source that you get all of your information from. It can tell you what all these red squiggly lines mean and why your alarm bells are going off. And I'm hoping you're asking that even after for the postmortems. And it's not just me, the person making the postmortem and making the report, telling people what's going on. It's more of a team experience of, hey, what could we have done better?
Although, Shawn, if you end up making a model at some point, you should name it Trust Me, Bro.
Yeah, I'll pick a use case a bit different from what we're discussing right now, which is mostly related with summarization. And we know that LLMs are like a very good use case to generate and summarize content. And Jason during incidents also mentioned like the capabilities to onboard someone new to the incident and to disseminate what's happening during the incident. There's also like the action itself when you're responding to an incident. And the way we have been looking at it is that on one side of the equation, you have like a new and novel incidents, which are like nobody really ever seen that. And then you have like the repetitive type of incidents that happen all the time in a way, or are very, very related. I think AI in that second part can really be very helpful. Let's think about you're doing a Kubernetes migration that you start with, you have 1,000 of microservices and you start updating clusters, or you have a service mesh update or something. And sometimes the upgrade fails and there's some issues and alerts kick off and something is wrong. As you are doing that migration, you can actually have your models looking at past data to check, yeah, this is not a new thing. Maybe it's new for you that you are owning this service, but other teams have faced the same situation. Here's what's the path to resolve this. And it's I guess in terms of productivity, the summarization and also this guiding through the resolution of the incident is there are productivity gains, but I also think that in terms of tackling incidents, it can be very, very powerful on these more repetitive incidents. And what we're working on is how do we tackle the other side of the equation, which is like new and novel. How can we help responders and companies really deal with major incidents of this kind?
Okay, thanks, Pedro. Let me just double check Yes, so just making sure we're on time and figuring out where we are. And I love the trust me, bro needs trademarking ASAP. If that shows up eventually, I think that we should all work on it. I think let's get this started, Shawn.
On my 1% on my
So one thing we were talking about, like obviously we just mentioned post review as well, post reviews of the incidents. We talked about how figuring out like new and novel incidents, also on how helping figuring out with incidents that happened in the past. One thing that we have been talking a lot now is the relationship between AI and juniors. That's like there are people that say, "Oh, AI is making juniors irrelevant, or they're making them redundant." I don't want to talk about that part because I don't think that's the point here. I think what we should talk about here is how do you see AI now playing in skilling up juniors when they're on call. So let's make turn this optimistic. So how can we not just juniors, but let's say anyone skill up when they are in their own on call day to day? Anyone wants to read that? Open up the.
Yeah, sure.
Pedro, go ahead.
No, I think, in terms of incident management or response, we by making relevant data available to first responders being junior people, I think we're really helping them on accessing relevant information, guiding them through what's the next best action to make. We know that everyone should have like updated runbooks and playbooks, and AI can also help generating those. But like fetching the relevant information at the right time on these critical situations is key. And I think probably a senior person already knows where to look without thinking. Junior people might be a bit more lost. But I think AI can really help on guiding the instant response for this.
I'll jump in. One of the things that I've seen is also being able to know which senior. So having that type of cataloging, I don't have it at my company, but I know there are some burgeoning startups and things who have some of the AI that is integrated directly into my, screen, recording what's going on every day, summarizing things, batching them up so that when incidents happen, it could say, hey, Shawn had this similar incident. This is how he resolved it. And even if, the AI is wrong, you could at least come talk to me and say, hey, it sounds like you got this similar alarm. What happened? Oh, yeah, I ignored the alarm. Or you could just say, hey, I pressed these buttons. But being able to know which human in the loop to go to for your questions is a very pivotal thing. I've seen people at least recording everything on their screen so that they know exactly who to talk to when they see a random red button flashing. So awesome use cases if y'all have systems like that. But we're doing it the old fashioned way. I just have to ask my seniors, hey, I don't know what's going on. Can someone help me? And then I screen record and send that to people. But if you have those AI systems, shout out to y'all.
Yeah, definitely. Like for me, I think the biggest benefit is getting rid of that sort of the tribal knowledge or the tribal elder, if you will, right? The SRE that's been around for forever. And so they know like, oh yeah, there's a weird quirk in the system and it's not documented. And you just have to know to ask that person, or you have to be that person with that experience. And, we talked about postmortems or incident retrospectives. And the more that we do that and expose that data, it really gets rid of that tribal knowledge. And so all of these weird, obscure use cases that were never documented before because nobody took the time now are documented, and you have a system that can raise them so that juniors can easily find that and just know.
Yeah, Jason, you raise a good point. I mean, I guess it's the Brent effect, isn't it? If you think about the Phoenix projects, that kind of engineer, SRE, that expert that knows so much but gets pulled into every single direction, and relying on them as that person to come in and save the day all the time just doesn't work and is not practical. So yeah, I definitely agree with what you've said there. I always like to think about like the first incident I ever got pulled into or had to deal with when I like to answer questions like this. And I just remember the panic of feeling this immense weight of responsibility of like, is the world going to implode if I, end up breaking something because I've done something by accident? So obviously knowledge bases and chatbots, as we've talked about, being able to ask those kind of dumb questions and look into the patterns is certainly an important thing that everyone has talked about. But also things around if we can use it as a triaging mechanism to eliminate some of the noise is another valid point. Because one of the things in my first ever grad role I had was I was a developer, but also the team was so small that worked on the application that I was also every single line of support. So sometimes knowing when to jump for something and knowing what was critical was something that I had to learn through making mistakes and building these internal heuristics in my own head, which again turns you into that kind of, person that has all the knowledge and the tribal knowledge that needs to be passed to other people. So actually being able to use these techniques for patterns to say, actually, you shouldn't be jumping for this right away because this is normally sorted out within 10 minutes or so, or this is relating to an environment that's not meant to be available today, or this is probably down to scheduled maintenance or something that could be fed into agents like this so that it doesn't annoy you is probably a good thing to consider as well on top of the knowledge aspects everyone has discussed.
I might be piggybacking a bit of what Pedro said on the previous question as well, but I feel like this is also one where that well-known versus novel incident situation is pretty helpful. Like it will just if you have the data access to, okay, this has happened before, and you can actually do what Shawn mentioned. Okay, this happened before, this is how they fix it. Maybe they added some incident notes, maybe there's a post-mortem link to it, maybe there's even a run book that was updated after that. But maybe nothing of those things would happen, but at least you have someone okay, this was the person that tackled this incident. Let's drop them a message on Slack, on Teams, or hey, help me out here. I have no idea how to fix this situation. So you can definitely piggyback on these things. And I think like this is like and also a great way to upskill yourself, but also build this comfort of that when it's something that has happened, you're gonna have that part, that safety net for you there in a sense. I want to follow up with a question. Yeah, I'm gonna do this one first. So I'm gonna leave the ROI for the last one because I think that's the one that people always want to talk about. So let's leave ROI for the last question. Let's start first with misconceptions. So what are some misconceptions about AI and incident management that you have heard in the wild on LinkedIn and social media in discussions? So what are a couple of things that you experienced there?
Well, on LinkedIn, what I see is that people say that AI is equal to magic, and that they believe there's a magical world, and AI will do more things that a human can do. Like in terms of, I do believe that what AI does is what a human can do, or several humans eventually, but it's not something that is really recreating something completely new. So having said that, I think for people that are more AI averse is that having good inputs guarantees more quality on the outputs. Exactly. So don't expect to have like just a magic one that is calling an LLM, it will solve all your problems. So obviously, if you give the right context, it's like a human, right? With all the context variables, you are able to make a more informed decision and have a better output. So let's say that if I only have an alert from Datadog, that might be enough for tackling an incident, but eventually there might be an alert that doesn't really provide me meaningful information for that incident. So I need to go and grab data from someplace else, from other tool, or for customer reports. Everything that a responder needs to do is to gather information, contextual information about what's happening. And if we gather that data, send it to a human or an LLM, obviously I think it will do a good job. But if you are only feeding half or a quarter of the information, it will not do well, right?
Yeah, definitely. AIs will not solve all of your institutional or organizational problems. If you're struggling right now with teams being siloed and like not talking to each other, not using the same tools, like your AI is not going to help if you don't know that like all of your metrics info is in Datadog and they're using Grafana, and like it's not going to be able to just like go and tap that person on the shoulder and be like, hey, let me see your data. Let me like correlate these things. So it really comes down to like all of the fundamental practices that you should be doing if you're setting up a good DevOps culture of breaking down the silos, sharing information, learning from incident retrospectives. If you're not doing any of that, like AI is not going to help you with any of that.
And I've heard it a lot less, so it makes me a lot happier. But I've heard a lot less hype for like one shots and immediately getting the right answer. And I'm over here saying, hey, even if it's 60% got the answer, I would press it a bunch of times and get the right answer. That feeling of it needs to get the right answer immediately is like crazy to me, because you could press a button and there's a statistical probability that they'll give you the right answer. Even if it was 1%, I would press it 100 times and get that 1% probability. Like, I don't understand this need for it to be 9 nines every single time it gets right. And you could just like, it literally takes a couple seconds to generate a new one. So that's the part that always got me, is that it's a 60%. Press it twice. Now you have 100. Like, I don't understand the barrier. But I understand that some people will only press it once. We do, unfortunately, sometimes only have one chance to please a customer, to catch that incident, to do that thing. So can we make that initial response better? What I've been doing is by pressing the button 10 times for my user behind the scenes and giving them a right answer. But that idea that you couldn't just press it again and get the right answer is one that I absolutely hate out there. Oh, I pressed it and it didn't give me the right answer. Did you press it again? Because I'm pressing it again and again and again, and I get the right answer pretty regularly. So I'm always confused when the hype is out there. Oh, AI got it wrong. Okay, try it again. It'll probably get it right. So that feeling is completely new, and I don't understand why people aren't so hyped about it, because I'm so hyped when I press the button again, and guess what? This time I got the right answer. That's amazing.
I would say, along with that, Shawn, because I love that answer, is give the feedback. Because a lot of systems have that, like, is this a good response? Is it not? And I think we've been so jaded by these things, because in the past, when it wasn't AI, it was just humans. You're just like, it goes off into the ether. Nobody actually looks at that, right? Like, maybe someone's like, oh, like they're using it for some performance report for some random employee. But with these systems, it's automated. So you actually are providing feedback, and that's helping to tune things. So when you see those, do those now. Like, give that feedback if it's good or bad.
Yeah, that gives a lot of like vibes of this is the new, have you tried turning it off and on again? But it's the same thing applied now to AI responses. So have you tried asking it again the same question just to see what it answers to you? Carly, do you want to add something here as well?
Yeah, I mean, we've covered a lot of it in terms of that notion of our assumptions on it being infallible, which Shawn's discussed so well. I think sometimes as well as not actually thinking about what data is being passed in, what the prompts are, how we can actually tune and improve it, I think, which is covered through other questions as well. We kind of just assume it's going to come up with this magical answer, despite the fact we didn't give it context or worked on it. Like any software system, you kind of have to work on it and nurture it and care for it. Otherwise, the thing's going to absolutely fall apart eventually. So I think we need to think about that aspect of you using it. We need to also look at the best practices for making sure it's got the right data, make sure it's, adequately secured within our solution. All those kinds of things need to be considered. And then I guess we should probably mention PDOM at some point, this notion that people think it's just everything's going to blow up, right? Or the thing that's going to change the world, that notion of your PDOM quotient as well. I think sometimes that misconception and debate gets lost around having constructive discussions around how we can practically use these things, but also make sure that we're using them effectively.
I want to as well mention something. I think Jason mentioned this part, and for me, I deeply relate with this. I pasted it on the chat, but want to put a bit more emphasis from that part, because that would be my bone to pick as well, which is AI won't fix your cultural issues. Like, and the same thing, we have been doing this with products and with everything in the day-to-day. Like, we expect solutions sometimes to fix issues that we have, whilst what we're seeing is no, we need to talk with each other, we need to discuss how we can improve the processes and not try to bring in something to fix that process. And I really related when Jason mentioned that part, so I just wanted to put a bit of extra light on a personal take was mine as well on that. So we have 11 minutes, so I think it's time to ask the ROI question, because I think that's what a lot of people are expecting here. So how do you measure the ROI or the success of AI initiatives in the incident management world at your organizations, at your day-to-day? So who wants to lead us off here?
I mean, I guess uptime. We're trying to keep our prod up and our features going. So that's usually what I'm looking at, being the person who does the demos and actually, showing people the product. I hate it when I'm going to show the person the product and, hey, product broken. That sucks. So that's what I'm instantly looking. Can I verify that this thing is about to work so that I don't look crazy in front of these CEOs? That's just what I'm looking at. How often is our product down? Great KPI to hopefully keep it up. For those who are demoing, please keep it up for me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think one thing I don't think is going to change is basically what Shawn said. This notion of SLOs, SLAs, uptime, those measures of, are things up at the right time? Is our system considered reliable? That's not going to go away, even though you've kind of sprinkled magic of AI, even though we found out it's not so magic, throughout incident management and any other practices. We just need to make sure that we're still meeting those fundamentally. I guess the other thing is, if you're thinking about measuring value, is also looking at the cost implications with adding in AI. So things like token usage and cost of using models and all these other things, using appropriate observability to make sure that you can capture those and then weigh off the benefit compared to what you're seeing in your SLOs and SLAs is probably the main way you're going to end up measuring whether it's effective or not.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. At the end of the day, your AI initiative is not the goal of your company, right? The goal of your company is delivering value, and whatever that value is, like, that's what you measure. And that's why SLOs, SLAs, things like that were created, was to get us to think of that, like, you're part of a bigger system, and what's the system actually trying to deliver? I guess if I were to add one thing, I would say it's probably going to be a little bit fuzzier, but it's the sentiment of the engineers, right? Like, hopefully, along with delivering that value, people are feeling better when they're in incidents, right? They're not only are they able to do it faster, but they're feeling less stressed. There's less burnout, things like that. It's harder to measure, but I think in any good organization, people are talking about how they're feeling and how they're actually doing on a personal level in the job. And so just kind of keeping tabs on that would be the other way.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree on the SLAs, SLOs kind of thing. It's like, the KPIs that, upper management and all teams also have in order, as a concern. I would say that, in specific areas of the incident management process, and we discussed some of like the post-mortem summarization during the incident, that can lead to productivity gains. And then, you're gaining money because you're not spending so much time of people doing that work. But there are other examples of such as, like, if you have a scribe on your meeting, just taking notes of the incident ongoing. If you need to draft a status update for your status page, maybe you don't need a human to do that, or you could just like have one less person on the call to do that. Eventually, even to assess if there are more customer reports coming in during your incident. These are things that can be automated and that you can leverage AI to eventually fetch data from your CRMs, Salesforce, Zendesk, wherever, to summarize is there an increment on the customer reports? What are these customer reports? All the data that can come into the incident management team to better handling incidents, and that's tied with cost savings in terms of time for the organization.
Okay, thanks everyone. We have a question from Andrew on the Q&A. I'll say this is a bit specific on how you're using your incident commander system. So is anyone here currently using AI to help serve as a deputy for the incident commander? Is this a use case that you have had or seen?
Yeah, sure. So the way we are using AI in your, incident commander processes is basically the scribe. It's no longer a human scribe. It's replaced by the transcript bot that then summarizes from time to time that detects key moments during the incident. We also do it to, as Jason said very well, someone joins the call, there's a summarization, summarizing everything that was from transcribe to the shot news or any kind of new incident information attached to the incident. And obviously on the post-mortem side of things, there are also gains in terms of summarization. On top of that, we are able to detect during the incident, was this related with the change event that happened on that service specifically, correlating data between GitHub events and the time of the incident. So we are using all of this data on our major incident process, which is led by incident commander, incident deputy, customer liaison, everything. All of these roles now have AI-assisted features, from customer impact to drafting status update. All of that is in place right now. We in terms of dog fooding, it's what we do before shipping stuff to customers.
Okay. Did anyone have a similar experience on this type of role?
Just the summarization portion. That's the only thing I've mainly seen.
Okay, so we have 4 minutes. I think we have time to go with some parting thoughts. And we have time to go with this question. So what advice would you give to teams starting to explore AI-powered tools for incident management?
Yeah, I can start. I guess like any technology that's appeared over the past whatever years in our career, I think we just need to be open with playing and experimenting with it. Maybe not leaving it for the big outage situation, but playing around with it and how to incorporate it when times are a bit more chill. Think about how you can include it in other aspects of your work as well, but then also think about the data, the context, the prompts, and the parameters and things that you can tune in order to improve and optimize for it. And I guess also share what you're doing. I mean, that's something that's always been going back to kind of the human factor, like we talked about with postmortems. Sharing what you're doing, sharing the best practices that you're seeing, what worked, what didn't work, is something that we should also be open to doing as well, I would say.
Yeah, I think similar to Carly, a lot of the discussion today has, I feel like, been maybe a little bit negative. How do you control for AI and things to be aware of? But honestly, things are constantly improving, and now is the best time to jump in. So, I'd say if you haven't tried using AI, definitely try it. As Carly mentioned, you want to try it before you're in an incident. But beyond that, with all of the AI, whether that's you're using it for coding or using it just like for other things, it's getting better, and starting now is a great time to just get in early, and you'll find the problems, but you'll also find places where it's amazingly good. And you'll start to build that skill to what Shawn mentioned earlier of being able to use it and to figure out how you can tune it or how you can tune your own interactions with it. No more one shots. How do you craft a good prompt? How do you craft and interact with it so that you get what you want? And then as it gets better, you're just going to be on top of everything.
Boom, and I'll jump in real quick. As Jason said, I am absolutely optimistic, very positive, because of the fact that it only takes a couple seconds to get that wonderful AI generation. And I'm hoping y'all use that time before your incidents happen to check out all of the amazing tools. Because once those red alarms going off, you're probably not going to have enough time to go check out the newest tool to solve that problem. So I'm begging people to go try out the tools before you need them. It's very stress-free. Oh, I press this button and it solved that problem that I don't ever really think about. You will definitely be thinking about it when the alarm bells are ringing in your face. And I'm hoping you remember that AI product that immediately solves this specific problem. But maybe you'll remember that if you start, checking out the products today, because there's lots of people right now solving an incident right now that the tool you're going to check out in a couple minutes could have instantly solved. I hope you're that developer solving that.
Yeah, to finalize, I would say like the incident management process is a continuous improvement, right? It's a flywheel, right? So you keep going through that, trying to improve every step of the way, from knowledge base monitoring. So you should still do that independently of using AI or not. So improve your coverage, test coverage, improve your observability. But when you plug in AI on this process, you'll see a drastic change in terms of what it can do to fasten this process and help you through this. But just get that data flywheel going, because everything will look very much better with data context there.
I love all the optimism that we end this session with. So, everyone, I would like to thank you so much for taking your time to come here, chat with each other, sharing your thoughts, sharing your knowledge. I think it was amazing. So, thanks to Carly, to Jason, to Shawn, to Pedro for spending time with us. Thanks everyone that joined and watched the session. Thanks to everyone who's watching the session on demand afterwards. So, thanks for watching it. Everyone, we'll see you on the next demo roundup and have a rest of an amazing day. Bye.